Security Ledger's Sunday morning news and review. I'm Paul Roberts, editor at the Security Ledger, and we are here today with Nick Selby, who is the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Cred Software, and we're going to be talking about the week's security news, IT security news, Internet of Things, and I can't think of anybody better to do it with than Nick. Nick, welcome.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Hey, first of all, take 10 seconds and tell us about Cred.
Street Cred, the pitch that I do always is Street Cred helps law enforcement agencies find their fugitives, get them out of the community, and bring the officers home safe every day. What we do is essentially big data techniques on relatively small data. Excuse me. We aggregate information from throughout the criminal justice system. We correlate it. We prioritize information about fugitives, gang members, parolees, probationers, sex offenders, then we securely push that out to the police cars so that the officers can use it to go get them.
Okay, so kind of bringing big data to the somewhat technology-averse law enforcement community.
Yes, exactly right.
Cool. Okay, it was another big week in terms of IT security news. The government NSA spying, PRISM, omnibus spying story just keeps rolling along as news keeps trickling out. It's kind of the death of 1,000 cuts for the NSA and for the Obama administration. But this week the news was about early in the week was about spying on intercepting data from data centers owned by Yahoo and Google overseas, so I guess in theory, not a violation of the NSA's mandate, and aggregating that data, doing data mining on it. What are your thoughts on this story?
Well, all right, I am a libertarian with a capital L, but I'm also a civil libertarian. When I hear these conversations, I can sympathize with people being upset, people being outraged at the process and policies and procedures that govern how our intelligence agencies gather intelligence and the kinds of intelligence that they gather. I am absolutely flabbergasted that there is any surprise that this is being done. I'm shocked to find that our signals intelligence agencies are engaging in signals intelligence. I literally, I mean,
Your winnings,
I'm not speaking now. Sorry.
Your winnings.
Yes. I'm not some kind of a Beltway insider. I'm not some, so I am here in an undisclosed secure location, but I'm not some kind of spook dude. I don't even have a security clearance. I found not a single one of these revelations to be surprising in any way, and I am most surprised that people find this surprising. I think that it's been a masterful rollout by The Guardian of the information that they had over a long period of time. Each slide seems to hold a week of circus,
yes.
And I consider that to be just absolutely masterful, as is the new website that they have up with interviews from a range of important people and Glenn Greenwald
Yes.
talking about the impact on American lives of this surveillance. I think ultimately what's going to happen is, and this is one of those things where I have to walk a thin line, the conversation around the policy and procedures is really, really good. And I think that the outrage of lawmakers and legislators and even journalists is absolutely important. I wish it didn't take these kinds of sensational revelations to get people interested in the intelligence process. I just said that none of this was surprising to me. And why is that? Because I read books, and I'm familiar with the way this kind of thing works. This information is not new. And it continues to surprise me that people are treating this as if, oh my God, this is a brand new thing. I would encourage people to go back and take a look at the body of literature that's out there. And you'll find that this has been in the public domain for a long time. So policy and procedure conversations are great.
Right. Well, in some ways, the most surprising thing is that we are reading about it, and in fact, that despite the high level of secrecy of the NSA, that they allowed this information to escape their clutches And I would say, yeah, I mean, I think if you look back 10 or 20 years ago and people would talk about the NSA, the reaction was, you know, for even people in government is, you know, who knows what those guys are doing, you know. We don't know. They got big antennas, and you know they're doing everything. But now
Well, I mean, I think
we know with specificity.
I think we had reasonable assumptions, reasonable inferences, and that's why I say none of this was surprising, right? If you take a look at what their mission is, and the way our networks communicate, the way we communicate on networks, the media that we use to communicate, none of this would be surprising. And I do think actually that we had, as it turns out, incredibly accurate guesses and inferences about how and what it is that they're doing. So I'm not sure if I agree with the last part of that.
Right. Well, I think what's surprising to people is the degree to which American citizens were caught up in this net as well. And I think the presumption that most of us made was, you know, their mandate is signals intelligence directed at, you know, foreign actors and enemies of the United States, and that you know, that the communications of U.S. citizens are not part of their purview. And I think when you read stories about them just vacuuming up data from Google or Yahoo, of course, it's inevitable that a significant amount of that is going to be, those are both U.S. companies, that a significant amount of that is going to be information from U.S. citizens. And, you know, I mean, I think people rightly have taken issue with that.
I think, and I agree with you. I think that rightly they've taken issue. I think that the conversation has to happen. The policies and procedures need to be more transparent. We need to understand what are the boundaries of what can be done. I would like to point out, people have asked me, you know, are you saying that you trust the government when you say that this doesn't make you nervous? No, I don't trust the government. I just work for the government, so I understand how difficult it is to do things once you gathering is not, you know, gathering is easy. Gathering is the easy part. It's actually doing something with it and finding the resources to take action. And in doing that, and I have a fair bit of experience here in taking information and looking through it and trying to find things that are of interest and trying to make connections and perform just fundamental link analysis. That's really hard.
Right.
And it's not something on which you want to waste a lot of time looking at Mrs. McGillicuddy's pictures of her roses that she's sending to her daughter. It's sort of, you just don't have the resources, the competence, the skill, the bandwidth, frankly, to actually go through. So it doesn't really worry me, but maybe that's because I wasn't surprised that they were doing it.
Right. Somewhat related note, you know, some more information about Edward Snowden this week and you know, his life in Moscow. I know you spent a significant part of your earlier career working in and around Russia. What's going to happen with Mr. Snowden, if you had to guess?
Well, I think his haberdashery is going to continue to decline, as we've seen.
I like that hat.
I'm trying very hard not to make any public statements about my opinions about it.
Context, you're referring to the picture of him on the boat in the river. Is that right?
On the Moscow River
Yeah.
cruise. Well, I mean, just that and sort of you know, his general appearance has become certainly more Russian. And you know, I remember I was speaking with some friends there, and we thought it would be really great to get some badass Russian tailored suits, and frankly, we found that we couldn't find any. It wasn't a question of money, you know. So all of our wardrobe came from Stockman in Finland.
You're in the wrong country, pal.
Pretty much, you know.
I will note, Stephen Colbert had something on Snowden and kind of had his picture up, and he said, you know, NSA leaker and Craigslist futon buyer Edward Snowden. Which I know was perfect.
I think that weirdly enough, I actually was impressed by a couple of things that he said and that his father said, which was basically, look, I'm not the story. The story is what I was leaking. That was the first thing consistent with an actual whistleblower that I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
You know, I still think that the term whistleblower for him is wrong. I think that whistleblowers release information which is illegal, and I've not yet seen anything that says that this was actually illegal, based on what we understand of what the laws are. I don't think, you know, that the term is appropriate, but I do think that his saying he's not the story was for the first time behavior that was consistent with somebody who was in fact trying to get a discussion started that didn't have to do with him. And his father said something similar. You know, he's just trying to live his life. I do find it highly interesting that he chose to live his life, you know, first in China and then in Russia, places that we don't normally associate. Well, certainly I don't associate in my mind with wonderful human rights conditions and transparency.
No, but he needed it, you know. But the list of countries that are big enough and bad enough to be able to hold the NSA and the U.S. government at bay is short, admittedly, and
Sure.
that's China and Russia are probably countries number 2 and 1, you know. So
Sure.
he can't go to South America because, you know, ultimately there's going to be arm twisting, and he's gonna be on a plane for Miami.
Well, I hear the Maldives are nice.
Yeah, the Maldives. They've got a lot of clout. Okay, so moving on. Another week of news revelations and kind of stuttering on the government's healthcare exchange. Well, I don't want to get into the politics of it because that's not really our purview. I want to talk more about, you know, whether there will be anything that comes out of this debacle that in any way changes the way the government develops and provisions large software products. Because I know you have worked in the software industry, I have worked in the software industry, and the idea that, okay, this is a complicated exchange, the product people are buying is not a simple product like a book. All the same, you know, given $350 million, I'm pretty confident that there are a lot of people in Silicon Valley who could develop a working website.
Yeah. And the answer to your basic question. Okay.
Yeah. So what's going to come out of this? What is the end product of this all going to be? I'm guessing eventually they will get healthcare.gov working, but is anyone going to really step back and take a look at, you know, why all these huge projects from the FBI's case tracking system to the many attempts at FAA, you know, flight control, air traffic control systems? Is anyone going to step back and say, why do these large and even small software projects go so wrong so often with us when other companies seem to be able to develop software fine?
So there's a few questions rolled up in there, and let me say, first of all, I agree totally that this has absolutely nothing to do with politics and everything to do with technology. So I'll just throw a couple of general ideas out there. Is the government learning? I think it is, and I think that we see the evidence of the government learning across the country. My involvement as CEO of Cred, as one of the Code for America 2013 accelerator companies, I see every day the fellows, the brigades, the people at Code for America who are working with cities across the country to make fantastic software at low prices, and software, more important, that is targeted specifically at solving the actual problems of citizens attempting to communicate with government. That is absolutely clear, and we see it in Louisville, Chicago, San Francisco, Oakland, New York. It's absolutely fantastic. This past week, the city of Philadelphia, along with the Wharton School and a company, a social entrepreneurial, like an accelerator called Good Company, they came out with a call for companies to create public safety software that'll be hothoused, that spend 3 months being accelerated in Philadelphia, and the best products there get piloted in the city throughout its public safety, so police, fire, EMT, corrections. What's wonderful about that is that the organizers of that program, which is called Fast Forward, made it a point not to declare or dictate solutions. What they did was they said, here's our problems, here are the problem areas that we have. That is the key. What are we having? What have we identified as a problem that we need help with? And now we can get entrepreneurs, innovators to come in there and say, here's how I think we can solve the problem. That fundamental approach, letting the user experience, the user goals drive the technology, is simply the most important thing. So
Right.
healthcare.gov was the antithesis of this. Healthcare.gov was a dictated series of thrown over the wall requirement documents written by people with not a lot of experience in what the end users wanted. They wanted to find out how much healthcare costs. That's really what they wanted. How much is it? Can I get it? What's the phone number? How do I get it? None of those questions were answered by the software. I think that that's important. But government is, in fact, learning from that experience. And I want to go back to one other really important thing. Can we get it working? I wrote a little bit about this. I've spoken a little bit about this. I want to define what working means, because working in the mouth of the administration so far has been you will be able to sign up and register and see the prices of healthcare. From my standpoint, viewing the way I do things through a security prism, that's not working. That's hobbling. What we had in healthcare.gov beyond any other problem was failure in Security 101. When you're thinking about becoming an information security person, you pick up a pamphlet at Best Buy and it says confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That's it, the magic CIA triad. Well, all right, we had no confidentiality, and we were proofing against the IRS database. We were for political reasons, really. And I've heard some interesting explanations of why they wanted to figure out exactly who you were and how much you made before they told you anything. But let's just say that they did. We've got systems never designed to talk to one another that are attempting and failing to talk to one another. There's back-end leakage here that's unknown and unknowable at this point. There's no confidentiality. There's no integrity in the data. We see that the 834 forms that are being sent from the, 50 people or so who were able to actually get through the process and say, yes, I want me some of that, those forms contain bad data, unreliable data. So there's no integrity. We don't have signal integrity. And, availability I don't need to really cover. It was not available, and it continues to be unavailable. So what I hear the administration saying right now is, we'll make it available. That does nothing for the confidentiality and the integrity. I think we're coming at it backwards.
Right, and in fact, there was an article this week based on some ersatz research that was done on the site that showed that there was a lot of insecurity in the way that the site was serving up information, allowing folks to reset passwords and stuff. So it's not surprising to anyone who's written about application security that in the mad dash to get this thing standing up by October 1, where they were trying to do security assessments while they were actually continuing to write code, that stuff slipped through, and that I think that we're going to hear a lot more about insecure application code just with this entire site. On the front end, the healthcare.gov part, and then on the back end, as you're saying, with the IRS and some of the other feeder agencies who are all connected to this.
Let me throw one thing in there.
Yeah.
The openness, and this is one of the biggest lessons that we're learning, right? First of all, let the users drive the technology, not the policy drive the technology. That's the first lesson. And I have some confidence that this has been heard all the way up to the White House, that this is not, the problems with healthcare.gov aside.
This is post-deployment. Now we're in production. Yeah. So.
Yes. So that has, I really believe that message not only has been made and heard, but actually I think that it's been taken to heart. You see a lot of the moves that the administration is making right now to get the right people. Alex Howard said something that still cracks me up. When the president said that they're going to bring in the A team, he said, "Wait a minute, which team did we start with, and why?" I really like that question. But the most important thing here is open data, the availability to have the availability of open data. We've seen it in San Francisco. We see it all across the country. Where there's open data, there's better software. I said last week that 3 guys. Remember, we found the code. There was a large spreadsheet hosted on Socrata. It's not really a spreadsheet. It's actually the actual database, which had all of the government cost estimate information. It was out there, hosted on Socrata at data.healthcare.gov, and a bunch of us saw it early on in the week. And we're like, look at this. This is how they're doing the estimates. 3 guys in a garage could make Jim, Tom, and Tony's healthcare.gov estimator, and they could do it overnight. Well, actually, I just saw that they did. The Atlantic Cities just did a great piece on the fact that these guys came out with not just an estimator that worked, but an estimator that was easy to use.
Right.
That's because the data was open.
Right.
When you have open data, you free entrepreneurs and innovators to do things with the data that government can never do because it's government. It's not government's job.
Right, but this all leads back to the problem around contracting and the way that these big projects are assigned, which is there's a very short list of companies that have gone through, cleared the hurdles to be able to even bid on these contracts. There are political considerations that I think play a role in what companies end up getting the jobs in the end. And none of these are not firms that anyone's ever heard of. And frankly, if you look at their track record, they usually don't have great track records either. But they're just, it's like Mo, Larry, and Curly. Who do you go? Well, we used Mo last time. We're going to use Curly this time. It's like they're all the Three Stooges. But it's very frustrating because what a wealth of talent there is. How, and for something as important as this, like you're saying, it would be good to have a big conversation first and saying, look, we know how we've done IT projects in the past, and we know what would have come out of them, which is a big mess. Let's try and do something different this time that might work. And obviously, as you're saying, that conversation didn't happen. And it didn't happen because the companies who would have that conversation had no chance of ever getting the work anyway.
Sure, and what you're saying is similar. I mean, I was overseas for a long time. When I came back to the States, I was always surprised at how people in Boston behaved in the snow. 3 inches of snow, they closed the whole city. They act as if they've never seen it before, even though it happened last year, and it'll happen again next year. We have a serious and similar problem with government procurement in this country, which is the third big lesson. And I think that if you take a look at all of the lessons, let the users drive the technology, open the data, and fix procurement. Those are the 3 main lessons from the healthcare.gov debacle. When we look at the way government procures, and you've just said really what the main problems are, in fact, those first 2 lessons inform the third.
Yes.
The way we fix procurement is to open up the data and what are we trying to accomplish here, right? What we're trying to accomplish is citizen engagement with government and government transparency to citizens. That's what we're trying to do in almost every case of government technology. The way to do that is to open it. My favorite example of this over the past few weeks has been smartprocure.us, which is an open procurement platform. It was created by a guy who's a lawyer and a reserve police officer down in Florida, and he saw that agencies across the country and even across his county, even in the same building, were paying different prices for the same technology from the same vendors, right? He was a police officer. He saw that they bought a printer. He watched the fire department in his same city buy the same printer for more money. He said that surely there's got to be a way of leveraging the knowledge that we all get when we buy government technology so that we can share and all benefit. And if you look at it, we benefit across the board. Costs come down, there's better competition, and government gets better things. Better things in this case should have been better software.
Sure. Oh yeah. Well, and also, can we get a web application for the price, for something less than it costs to make an F-35? I mean, we should be able to. We should be able.
Well, I agree. And once I saw the data,
one up for a couple $100. So
Yeah. Well, seeing the data drove me nuts. Seeing the JavaScript code, seeing the actual code that came out, that was an appalling. When I can find problems when you're coding, you're really bad.
Yes.
That's first. Second, when I saw the actual data, my kid could set up a healthcare.gov knockoff site on WordPress.
Right.
And it wouldn't take him very long, and I think it would cost him $99 if he wanted his own domain.
Right.
This is not rocket science, and as I said earlier in the week, it's costing as much as building rockets.
Right. Okay. Final question. I wanted to talk briefly about the Adobe breach. There was a little bit more news this week on the dimensions of that. A lot more data, a lot more customers affected by that than we knew about. 10 times as many, and more source code leaked. Once again, we're into sort of news is dribbling out about the extent of this breach, and it's all bad news. This is software that's really permeated the enterprise. What should companies be thinking about this, and what's to be done about it, really?
I wasn't part of this response, but I've heard from Aaron Turner that when Microsoft faced very similar problems in the early 2000s, they ended up shutting down for a bit and actually conducting conducting a top-to-bottom security review. I really think that that's all you can do. As I've said about healthcare.gov, where I don't believe that you can just patch it and get going, I really believe that a fundamental re-examination of how they do business, how they code, the way they test their code throughout the software development lifecycle, which is something that I'm not really seeing much evidence that they're actually doing. It appears that, like Microsoft back then, there were thousands and thousands of lines of code in there that people don't even know what it is. They can't take it out because they don't know what will break.
Yeah, what will break.
They're going to have to go back and take a serious self-examination and take a look at what they have. I think it's very important also to commend Brian Krebs on the investigative reporting that helped lead to this and others. The man is doing a fantastic job, not just with this, but also with credit agency breaches,
yes.
public records breaches. This is the kind of digging that we actually need. It's a lot more actionable, I think, than some of the other things that people are saying, hey, let's fix that. This is actually fixable. So taking a look at what Adobe has to do going forward is take security seriously, make security part of your development lifecycle, build it into your culture, and start over, essentially.
And I agree with you on Brian Krebs. He's, he's the reporting he's doing on Cyber Underground and all of this stuff is really just there is really no comparison. I don't think anyone else there is. We're all just kind of picking up his table scraps, and have been for a while. It's too bad as well with Adobe because in some ways, Brad Arkin is a smart guy and has been doing, I think, a really good job in terms of changing the culture of that company and getting them focused on application security and certainly changing their attitude. Obviously, he's the CSO, but this was a pretty devastating breach. It obviously went undetected for quite a while, and what can you do?
Well, and that's another issue. Not being aware of the status of what it is that you have, continuing to sell it. I do feel bad when people come in and they make genuine attempts to beef up security, and I've seen this over and over in the Fortune 500. They're saying, okay, we're really going to get serious about this, but they come butting up against the business, and this is really what that whole concept of I personally don't believe in return on security investment, but there is a sense of risk management. And we hear this a lot, but we really don't often see companies able to engage in the kind of risk management that ultimately saves money and sometimes saves lives that you really need to do until, unfortunately, some really terrible incident happens. You see it, right. You saw it at Sony. You see it here where, okay, we've been talking about this security stuff. It isn't just about not putting your password on a Post-it note on your monitor, but there are much more fundamental considerations. I think that Adobe's now at the business end of those fundamental considerations.
Okay, I asked you for your story of the week, and you brought up a story that I actually hadn't been following, but you have regarding buffer software, and give you a chance to just give us the lowdown on that incident.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not sure how much lowdown I have, but that's probably because Buffer's public statements have been so wonderful that it seems. I'm really waiting for more statements from the company, and they even responded to me out of nowhere. Just hey, I just sent them a note saying, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this, and they're like, sure, give us a couple of days to maybe calm down a little bit. Buffer is a social media management platform.
Like a Hootsuite or something.
Something like that, yeah. They help you schedule and manage your social media activity for people and for businesses. They were hacked last week, and we found out that they were hacked because 500,000 people started posting about diet pills in their Facebook timelines. And the response was actually really interesting. They didn't, if you compare and contrast it with healthcare.gov, it was fascinating. Where healthcare.gov was, everybody pointing in different directions. What Buffer did was immediately come out and say on Twitter, we've been hacked, we'll get you information very soon. And really, within minutes, they had a blog post up saying, we've been hacked, here's what it means to you. And in that post, they described what they knew and what they didn't know, and what the effect was and what it wasn't. They made complete non-conditional apologies, and then they set to working and being transparent. And they updated it every couple of hours until the problem was fixed. It's a fascinating company to me because their concept of radical transparency, as they call it, has led to them doing a lot of surprising things, like this breach. This kind of security reaction to a breach is the kind that, as an incident responder, I used to ask people to do, and they wouldn't.
Yes.
These guys actually post their revenues and their earnings on their website every month. They're a privately held company. They're a startup. But the kind of transparency they engage in really lends itself well to a security incident when the cat's out of the bag. And I'm not saying you should always tell the public when you get breached, but if it's out, then yeah, you should do what Buffer did. And what Buffer did is a lesson to us all.
Right, and I think you're seeing that more with some of these startups. I know LastPass has had some security incidents where they've had, well, as far as we know, good disclosure about what happened and what didn't happen, and use their blog and social media to kind of push rather than respond to, which is the model that I think you and I kind of writing about this space for the last decade or so are more used to, which is kind of what Adobe, the reporter comes to you and says, do you have something you want to tell me? And
they say no.
They say no, or they say as little as they possibly can, right? But no,
in my experience,
you do see it with some of these, some of the younger companies where there is more of a, less embarrassment about it and more just sort of, look, this is a part of doing business, unfortunately, and it happened, and here's as much as we know, and we wanted you to know as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody gets hacked.
I'm a fan. I like it. Makes you report.
But when you get hacked, there's certain things that you can do. I mean, like as a company, at Street Cred, we know that there's no such thing as unhackable. We take a lot of precautions. We do put in security testing in the lifecycle. We use White Hat to test our application all the time. We use Immunity Security to test the base build. We do a lot of things to try not to stop hackers, but so that when we get hacked, we can understand that we have been hacked very quickly. We can move to scope the incident as fast as we can and recover as quickly as we can. That kind of thing, if everyone would shoot for the ability to fix things fast and understand what's happening, I think that we'd be in a lot better shape. But also when it comes to the communication strategy, when I look at what the guys at Buffer did, they didn't not say something just because they didn't have anything to say. What they came out and said was, we've been hacked. We know that. We're not sure what's happened yet. We know that it affects our Twitter and our Facebook customers, and we're working on that, and we'll come back to you as soon as we have more information. That is so much better to hear as a customer than, we'll come back to you when we know exactly what happened. Really? I'm sitting out here and I have no idea that you're actually doing anything.
Right.
And I actually blogged about this. I said that you can screw up monumentally. I pointed at Bill Clinton's "I did not have sex with that woman" tape. As you can screw up and be forgiven. You can, like TJX, screw up terribly across the board over and over again, and still maintain the trust with your customers and still engage. And look at their stock price. If you take a look at their stock price over the time of the incident and up until now, it took a little bit of a hit, and then it went up and up and up. It's never gone back.
Yeah.
They managed the incident well, and they didn't even do that particularly well.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I think one of the issues there is, what is your business? And I think that the danger is when your business is providing trust and integrity, and there's a breach of trust. It's the DigiNotar example. Then
example.
Right. Then maybe it could be an existential threat. TJX, it's a retailer, so people sure. Go in and buy stuff. So you're right. If it's
but I understand that credit cards are important to retailers. I've heard that.
Yeah.
That was what got breached. They were they had the Marx Brothers running their back end systems,
right.
and then they did very well. My favorite rumor at the time was that they. Yes.
Go on. Sorry.
But my favorite rumor at the time of the TGX breach was that an army of people showed up and said, "Boy, if you only bought our What's It, you never would have had this problem." TGX actually engaged in some very, very shrewd negotiation with the security vendors at the time, up to and including getting discounts for things like being able to say, "We helped TJX after the breach." That's pretty smart. They ended up getting the A team. They never had a team. They got the A team afterwards, and they've done pretty well since, and that does build customer trust.
Great. Hey, Nick Selby, thank you so much for taking the time and talk about the week's events with Security Ledger. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Great. And we'll talk again. Nick Selby is the CEO of Street Cred Software, and this has been the Security Ledger Weekly News Roundup. Thanks for joining us.